Hello guys, and welcome to another brand new edition of The Backgrounder. And today I'm going to talk about Dick Cheney. So the former US Vice President passed away yesterday, and one of the most powerful and most influential politicians he was from the United States. And usually we see a powerful president and he is being followed by a vice president, but as you have seen, there is a particular scene in House of Cards where Kevin Spacey says, "What kind of vice president do you want me to become? A doormat or a matador?" And Dick Cheney belongs to the latter section, because usually the political system in the United States is such a way that it's the president who is in charge and the vice president generally remains inconsequential. But Dick Cheney changed it completely on its head, because here George W. Bush was the second fiddle until the first. I mean, these guys were in power for 8 years. The first 4 years it was Dick Cheney who definitely shadowed him, but after that it was George Bush, because I think George Bush realized that what kind of harm Dick Cheney was doing to his image. So he decided that no, I have to take charge, and that's why his inner circle, Stephen J. Hadley was the national security advisor at that point of time, and Condoleezza Rice, then Secretary of State, they decided no, we will have to push Bush first, because if we are not gonna do that, then it's gonna be Dick Cheney who's gonna take all the limelight, which he did. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about Bush in this video. I'm going to talk about Dick Cheney. Yesterday he passed away. That is the reason. I've been reading a lot about Bob Woodward's book for a very long time, and one character that keeps popping up is Dick Cheney. I mean, the dialogues that the things that he said in those books, I mean, whatever the transcripts were, I don't know where Bob Woodward is getting that from, but whenever Dick Cheney comes out, he comes out as a secretive character who has got lots of authority. He will take you to the task, and he was unapologetic. I mean, nowadays you have all these people who feel that the human rights are getting violated and people are being tortured for no reason, but Dick Cheney was exact opposite. He was, I think, one of those conservative people who had no qualms about it whatsoever, that United States was using waterboarding techniques and all that stuff, which really causes trouble you psychologically. Let me tell you, if you go through waterboarding, it's a really dangerous thing, and it almost makes you feel that you're sinking, and it's prolonged sinking. So when you go through it, it's like it's worse than dying. But Dick Cheney was unapologetic. He said that if there were not these techniques like waterboarding, extensive spying, let me tell you, United States actually passed a legislation which actually allows you to tap into anyone you feel is suspected of terrorism, and which means like virtually you, me, anyone can be tapped into. So which is definitely a direct attack on your privacy. But Dick Cheney later on, even after when the Barack Obama came into power, even after that, Dick Cheney continues to defend his decision that these waterboarding techniques, the extensive torture, were necessary to keep United States safe. And that's where Dick Cheney stands out. He was the fall. I won't say he was the fall guy, but he was the Darth Vader, as he was later came to known as Darth Vader. And because he was the one who would go and make these unpopular claims, unpopular decisions, and take the fall for it. I think one of the most hated guys and one of the most intelligent and smartest people became the White House Chief of Staff when he was 34 years old, and then rose to become the Defense Secretary when George W. Bush's father attacked Iraq in the 1990s. Dick Cheney was Defense Secretary, and he oversaw that war. Then obviously became the vice president of the United States. But in between, in the 90s, when he was not in the government role, he was I think a top official for this oil company called Halliburton, which is based out of Texas. So he was very rich, and there is a New York Times report which says that he almost earned $40 million as a salary. So we all know that when it comes to ruthlessness, efficiency, efficiency, an ideal man, Dick Cheney. Like, if you see in the conservative circles who say that women should serve the man, a woman should raise kids and cook and clean, and the man should go out and earn as much as money as possible. In that terms, Dick Cheney would have been a great husband, a great man. But what really hits me about Dick Cheney is the unapologetic tone, that whatever happened, even if it's a torture, we don't care. It actually helped United States keep secure. And actually, when 9/11 happened, Dick Cheney was there. I mean, he was in the Presidential Emergency Center, and Bush was not there. He had flown to somewhere in Texas in a school, in an elementary school. He was there, but Dick Cheney was in the White House, who was then stormed into the POEC, the Presidential Emergency Center, and there he actually took charge of White House response. So he was the man there, right there. And we all know that one plane had already hit the World Trade Center, other had hit Pentagon, and there was this third one which was still in the air, and people were speculating where it's gonna hit. And that's when Dick Cheney actually asked George W. Bush, he was at his Air Force One, that I need your authorization to strike any of the plane I feel could be a missile and coming to White House. And there were, in the heat of the moment, there were false intelligence reports that a missile is heading towards White House, or a plane is heading towards White House. And that's when Dick Cheney called George W. Bush and asked him, I want your authorization. And he gave his authorization to him, and he called Defense Secretary, who was at that point of time was Donald Rumsfeld, and he told him that I am giving authorization to strike anything which you feel can be used against us, or could be used as because what Al Qaeda did was they made this whole aeroplane into a missile. So you have all this necessary permission to strike any plane which you feel that can be turned into a missile and can be used to hit the White House. So he was that authoritative guy. And we have seen this movie called Vice in 2018, and in the first opening scene, they actually make a claim that Dick Cheney was someone who actually realized how confused and complicated this modern world is, and if you can be authoritative and if you can be a little cunning like he was, you can actually gain a lot of power. But I think there is more to it. I do believe Dick Cheney was one of the ruthless, one of the most powerful vice presidents, and I think he should serve as an inspiration for lots of vice presidents to block way for presidents and not to be a yes man. Sometimes it can be a bottleneck or a roadblock for a legislation, but I think sometimes it's necessary. When a guy like Trump is in power, you need to check it. That's what Mike Pence did and almost paid the price for it. But now you have JD Vance, who might not even question it. So just imagine, had there been a vice president like Dick Cheney right now, I'm pretty sure one of them would have killed the other. Dick Cheney was also one of the architects of the weapons of mass destruction stuff, because a lot of people didn't believe that Iraq had that weapons of mass destruction there, but Dick Cheney was like, no, it's there and we need to strike it, we need to send force for it. And if you remember, Al Qaeda terrorists, they were trained in Afghanistan, and Bin Laden was supposed to be in Afghanistan, so the strike should have been on Afghanistan, right, which America did. But by the end of 2001, they had already invaded Afghanistan. But then it was Dick Cheney and his support staff who actually convinced George W. Bush to hit Iraq as well, and they connected it. They connected the whole thing to Iraq. That whole this 9/11 thing, that Iraq was involved there. He convinced him, and that's when George W. Bush asked Tony Blair, and these both two countries actually went into war with Iraq, when Iraq has got nothing to do with it. So I think a lot of money is also wasted by Dick Cheney. But you gotta understand, sometimes you need a hawk. When there is an enemy outside your country, like Islamic terrorism, which wants to destroy you, sometimes you need hawks like Dick Cheney just to protect you. But then the kind of corruption that he was involved in and stuff he was involved in, which is not proven at all, but if you see his track record, I mean, he was very, very loyal to his people, and he tried his very best to defend him. I mean, when Donald Rumsfeld came under fire, it was Dick Cheney. The whole nation was against Donald Rumsfeld, but Dick Cheney wasn't. He was still with Donald Rumsfeld, because Donald Rumsfeld was the one who brought him to the White House. If you remember, back in 1974, I think, when Gerald Ford became the president after Nixon fiasco, it was Dick Cheney who became the White House chief of staff on Donald Rumsfeld's insistence. So Dick Cheney never forgot the favor that Donald Rumsfeld made to him. And when Donald Rumsfeld was under pressure because of his leadership in the war in Iraq, it was Dick Cheney who stood by him. Everybody was against him. Dick Cheney was with him. He tried to convince the president, George W. Bush, that no, you shouldn't be sacking him. But at the end of the day, then Donald Rumsfeld has to go, and Dick Cheney remains very loyal to his inner circle. There's a guy called Scooter Libby, who was his chief of staff, and when he got into jail because of some stuff, and George W. Bush didn't commute his sentence, Dick Cheney got pissed off at George W. Bush. Not many people know this, but he got really pissed off at him, and he told him, and I quote, "You are leaving one of our own to die." That was the kind of loyalty Dick Cheney had, the passion that guy had, the ruthlessness that guy had. And one of most influential, most powerful vice presidents, and credits to him that in a country like United States, in a political system like United States, Dick Cheney changed the game. But again, this video is not about I'm not making him justifying his decisions or judging him. I'm just telling you whatever I've read upon him, because I have made a lot of content on Dick Cheney. If you haven't, just go and check it out in my short section. I've made a lot of content on Dick Cheney, and I thought I'd done a lot of research on him. I think this video should have been made since he died yesterday. And if you see all these people, now Dick Cheney is gone, Donald Rumsfeld is gone, Colin Powell, who was the Secretary of State in George W. Bush administration, he is gone. And a lot of people are on their way out. I mean, George W. Bush is old. And this is what happens, you stay in power and after 20 years, you're gone. So never take things for granted. And this is a message for Donald Trump as well, because I'm pretty sure 20 years from now, Donald Trump will be gone as well. So if just because you're president, don't think that you owe anything to anyone. Within 20 years, you will be either gone or you will be in the process of getting gone. I hope you liked this video. I hope I've given you some value of this video by sharing some of the things that I came across while researching Dick Cheney. If you want more videos on US politicians, do comment whom you want me to talk about, and what kind of content you want to see on this channel. I've been pretty clueless of late what kind of content I should make. Do comment. Your suggestions are welcome. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you will like, share and subscribe. Thank you.